Hello, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Beamy, and I'm gonna try to. Today's we're talking about how I overcame PTSD twice. Um, this is a subject matter and a topic of conversation that really, we could talk about all day. There's way too much for one video and one conversation to get into. Whether that's generally or personally for me specifically, but it's it's really interesting, honestly, to me at least. I was diagnosed with PTSD at the age of 5, PTSD and ADHD, due to early childhood trauma and abuse, and I didn't know the how that relates to other people in the outside world as a young kid and all that. And it wasn't until I got older that, most often you hear PTSD, maybe not so much these days now that it's less of a stigma and less of a hush-hush thing to discuss. And people are kind of in a better position to receive help or receive conversations and support regarding things that are traumatic and difficult to work through. I'm far from the only person who has faced challenge and difficulty, but I got to spend a couple days on set of the most recent short film I was working on, and it is actually like kind of a commentary or a project that doesn't shy away from the realities of PTSD in terms of soldiers and veterans fighting in combat in wars. And I'm somebody who has been, pretty anti-war and not very into the military, but that experience on set and meeting some of the other guys who did have military experience, and reading the script and kind of portraying some of these guys, putting myself in that position, learning their stories and stuff, I think was really healthy for me. And understanding the reality of like a lot of these kids, 18 out of high school, you enter the service, you see a bunch of awful things that it's and the way that I've heard, and even most, the other day I heard people talking about some of the dark and difficult and horror filled things that you see, and how it kind of eventually takes on this numbing feeling. You become conditioned to darkness and like unspeakable, unimaginable atrocities. And hearing soldiers talk about that from their perspective is something really interesting to me, because that's something I relate to a lot. The conditioning, the numbing, the seeing horrible things, the experiencing horrible things. And it doesn't take war to understand that or to know how that feels, but it does take some really intense and dramatic and drastic environments. And so I was basically like under, as a young kid, they were trying to determine whether I was, if I had bipolar disorder, because of the reality of that being seemingly can be a hereditary thing. My mom's bipolar, my aunt's, her sister's bipolar, my grandpa's bipolar, my great-grandma's bipolar. So obviously it's a thing that has been pretty prominent in my family. And thankfully, not that there's anything wrong with being bipolar, but I witnessed a lot of the effects of bipolar disorder in my family and my upbringing and my mother, and at a young age started to understand that, you know, there's this disorder, and then there's being a crappy human being, and that disorder having a much greater negative effect on your life and your you know, I always said, like, my mom is a pretty awful mother or has done a lot of awful things and is very difficult to be around. Sober, without alcohol, without addiction, without drugs. But you add on alcoholism, you add on drugs, you add on the disassociation and distraction of substances, and, you know, you reach a new level. So I was I was in therapy from the age of 5 to 22, and I began having a vocabulary and having an understanding that I'm a victim of child abuse while I was still in an abusive environment and being abused as a child, and, you know, trying to, like, tell court judges that I shouldn't really be around my abuser, and trying to balance all of those things. But they basically determined that I didn't have bipolar disorder, but I had PTSD, because my struggles and my behavioral issues and whatnot, and my what is it, like, being behind emotionally, stunted emotionally, compared to my age group and my peers, was related to my trauma, was related to my abuser. And the more that I got away from that, the more stable and consistent and normal and, like, healthy I was. And, you know, it took every ounce of me every single day, and a lot of practice and a lot of rewiring. Thankfully, I had an incredibly loving father, incredibly wise father, who put up with everything that I put him through and didn't rest until I was in a good place. And then he rested for good, because he died of cancer, basically right when I got there. And you know, I'm incredibly grateful to him. But I probably didn't really feel like I had the leftover symptoms of my abuse and trauma until I was, you know, about 16, 15, 16, which is how old I was when he died. And then I was going through a different thing, not trauma related, but grief related. So then I had a lot to work on in terms of the grieving process. But that's a different thing, and another video for another day. But I remember, like, going to sleep every night and having all these dark thoughts and all these negative feelings about myself and about life. And, you know, I just wanted to die for the first 8 years of my life. And, man, I mean, it's hard to really articulate looking back, but it was like years and years and years of every single night when I'm going to sleep, training myself to, oh, that's a dark thought, you know, think of something else immediately. Think of something good, replace it with a positive thought. If I had some weird, twisted, dark thought of, like, oh, you know, I want to hit that kid or whatever, like, being like, oh, that's not me, that's my fear, that's my trauma, that's my mom speaking through me. That's, you know, in therapy we called it Mr. Anger. There was me, who it was everything I am, kind, smart, intelligent, attractive, like, hardworking, and then there was Mr. Anger, who was trying to sabotage me, and both were in me. And I remember feeling so often like this, like, literally physically feeling like there's two entities within me, and one there's only one clear victor. There's only one clear part that is me, and then this other entity that's in me is not, and he's not welcome. He's not. This isn't his home, and I have to face him and counter him, and until he doesn't exist anymore, stare him directly in the face and directly in the eyes. And I used to have nightmares, and it wasn't until I it takes a lot of practice and facing it directly, realizing that they're scared of me. The darkness is scared of me. I am such a bright light. I am so full of goodness and love and strength and determination and talent and empowerment that darkness is scared of me. And once I took on that mindset, it eventually over time became not a battle. There was no battle anymore. It was a constant battle for a long time, but then there was no battle. There was nobody to face. It was gone. I was too busy living in my day-to-day life, making friends, being social, like having fun and good times and good moments, and making connections and being successful and finding passions and like being myself. And the only other aspect of what, going through the grieving process when my dad died was that I didn't have any guidance anymore, so or healthy role models, so I had to I kind of became numb in that way after losing him, and that is what eventually led me to kind of repeat the cycle of my childhood and date somebody who was exactly like my mom, who hit me, who spit on me, who screamed and made me bleed and made me broken and dejected and worthless and isolated, and take on all these false beliefs all over again of how horrible I am and how and now I had Mr. Anger back at full strength, and I didn't know myself. And coming out of that, I've mentioned this before, but coming out of that, there were times where I would just imagine, or I would accidentally come across a video where I'd hear her voice, or I'd imagine, oh my God, what if I run into her? What if I see her? And the pit that would create in my stomach, the nausea, the full body like chills, and the tears and the shaking of just the thought of that person existing anywhere near me was completely overwhelming. But I'd felt that before because it's how I felt for years in regards to my mom. And once I felt that and I recognized that feeling, I was like, man, I've basically given, by choosing to be in this relationship for as long as I was, I've given myself PTSD all over again, except as a man. And I recognized how much I'd become the little boy that I used to be now as a grown man, and how also, that's humiliating. It's shameful. It's hard to, it's not, something I'm proud to admit. It's ridiculous, and I beat myself up over it for a long time. I've held a lot of guilt about it for a long time. And I eventually had to get over that too and recognize I got through that as a kid. I already laid out the blueprint for myself. And I've said before, there were probably times back a few years ago coming out of that, like I could have used therapy. But I didn't have, my dad to put me in therapy. I didn't have money. I didn't have a support system in place any longer. I was just on my own, winging it and sleeping in my car and trying to take it one day at a time and figure it out. But I slowly started reminding myself of like, man, it actually was a lot darker when I was a kid, and it was a lot harder. And the fact that I made it through that, man, little Beamy didn't go through that to make it this far and just succumb to the same garbage and the same BS as a man and fail. And I went back at it, started doing the same things when I went to sleep, pushing out the same thoughts, replacing them with good ones. like now I had actually some other tools in my tool belt that I didn't have as a little kid. Meditating, journaling, writing down my dreams, and this time also I had to do it myself. I didn't have my dad. I didn't have, and I think it ultimately made me have a deeper and closer connection to not just my dad, but God and the universe, and something beyond us and our and the tangible, physical, visual reality that we exist in. And it it I realized, like, what I went through as a kid was just to reach a point where I can function as a human being long enough to, like, I also needed a cleansing and a purging in my life, and I needed to surround myself around better people, and I needed to kind of get humbled and checked and reset. And man, it was extremely difficult and intense and dramatic, but I don't know how else it could have gone, and I'm much better off for it. And I just now recently, maybe like a few weeks ago, feel like I'm actually kind of in a consistent spot where I no longer feel the effects of my second case of PTSD, and I'm really proud of that. I'm living in a place with running water and a shower and ability to cook my own food for the first time in 3.5 years. I'm working hard. I'm doing all the right things, and it's making a difference. It's I don't think a lot of people understand PTSD or trauma and the real effects of it. And obviously, there's a lot of like clickbait and buzzworthy words and material in terms of trauma and influencers and mental health and kind of the superficiality of what it's become. But like way before any of that, I was doing this stuff, and that's not to say, oh, I'm so good because I was. It's like I didn't have a choice. Like I either was gonna make it through or die, and I wanted to die for a long time. I didn't know how to kill myself, and once I did, I didn't want to die anymore. I recognized the power, the impact that I can have on the world, beyond myself, the help that I can provide for others who weren't as fortunate as me to wrap their head around their shortcomings and their hardships and their abuse and family and stuff like that. So I'm incredibly grateful and incredibly fortunate to be who I am and have what I have. And I've known since I was 3 years old. I've always said I'm gonna work on myself and handle myself, and then give the rest of my life to youth of the world, especially kids and everyone beyond me. And that's still very much my goals. And yeah, I mean, I think like I just wanted to have this conversation, speak on like how honestly trippy it is to have done it twice, and they're similar but different both times, and how honored and how much I don't take any breath or any moment for granted. How honored I am to just like exist in today's world at all, to be myself, and for all that lies ahead. I really feel like I'm closing this book on this past. I don't have to talk about the past. I don't have to talk about oh, this bad relationship or this bad upbringing or this bad environment. Like, yeah, all that's true, all that happened, but I've been a part of some incredible things. I have some absolutely wonderful people in my life, and the future is really what is the topic of discussion these days, and moving forward on this channel for myself in my own life. Like, there's so many fantastic things in motion and on their way that I'll be so happy to share and to showcase and to experience. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to preliminarily talk about some of the, or like briefly touch on some of this, and you're not alone. Um, just keep at it, keep working hard, keep trusting in yourself, believe in yourself, and if you don't, practice. Everything takes practice. You're not gonna pick up a basketball and dunk. You're not gonna pick up a pen and be a great writer. You're not gonna turn on the oven and be a fantastic chef. And you're not gonna wake up and magically be over all of your trauma and hardships. It takes a lot of work, and it's worth it. And I'm living evidence of that. And I'm here for you. And any support or thoughts that I can provide, please reach out. At my website, beame.earth, www.beame.earth. It's always in the description of these videos, and there's a contact page, contact link there. Text me, call me, email me, whatever. I'm here for the people, and I care about you. And I'm in a good place now to be able to be somebody who feels worthy enough to be a friend and a support. So yeah, take care. I love you. Bye.